Today on Rust Belt Vintage Toy Repair, I'm going to repair the 1979 Sears Moto Drive car action game. Here is a video of the 1979 Sears Moto Drive car action game in action. Introduced in 1979 and featured on page 603 of the Sears Christmas catalog, the Sears Moto Drive car action game takes up almost a third of the page. The advertisement boasts the following in the ad. Turn on the ignition key. Shift transmission in either of the two forward speeds. The steering regulates the car's course. So you drive car around obstacles, follow the road by steering right or left. You decide where you want to drive next. Unboxing. The Sears Moto Drive car action game comes in an appealing box with this toy displayed in all its glory. The top of the box includes information such as this toy is battery operated, that it has 2 speeds in neutral, and requires 3D batteries that are not included. 2 sides of the box display operational instructions, and this toy was a product of Singapore. The box contains the following: the Moto Drive car action game, a set of perforated paper bridges, steering wheel, and kept in the battery compartment for safekeeping, 2 keys on a chain and 2 cars, one red and one white. Testing. I love the printed graphics around a roadway. The artwork really has a late 1970s feel. In addition, the speedometer graphic is a nice touch. In order to test, you must first install the required batteries. The battery compartment door flips up to expose the battery compartment. This toy requires 3D batteries for operation. Then the battery door must be closed. Here is the connection for the steering wheel. It just slides in place on the mount. A white or red car is placed on the roadway just behind start. This toy has a pseudo-ignition switch. One of the provided keys was inserted into the ignition switch and turned either to the left or right to start game operation. With batteries installed and an ignition switch turned to the on position, nothing happened. My 1979 Sears Moto Drive car action game is in need of repair. Repair. The batteries were left installed in this toy for troubleshooting purposes. Access to the electromechanicals of the 1979 Sears Moto Drive car action game was from the bottom. I removed both the steering wheel and ignition key to prevent breakage when it was turned over. Turning this game over revealed that the bottom is covered with a cardboard insert. 4 screws must be removed in order to expose the electromechanicals. Inside the 1979 Sears Moto Drive car action game is the following: battery compartment, ignition switch, shifter, motor gearbox assembly, and steering mechanism. I energized this toy by turning the ignition switch to the on position. This could be done from the inside without the keys by twisting the cylinder. I connected a voltmeter across the motor's connections. And notice the sum of the battery voltages. This means that the motor is getting power but is not turning. The issue with my 1979 Sears Moto Drive car action game is a broken DC motor. Although voltage was present at the motor, it was a little low, possibly due to corrosion on the electrical contacts. I used 800 grit sandpaper to clean up the contacts on the ignition switch. Then used the Oxid D5 contact cleaner on a Q-tip to finish the cleaning of the ignition switch's electrical contacts. Label 107 plastic-friendly oil was then used to make the ignition switch turn freely. 800 grit sandpaper was also used to clean up the contacts on the shifter, followed by cleaning with a Q-tip soaked in Deoxid IT D5 contact cleaner. Finally, Label 107 plastic-friendly oil was used to lubricate the shifter's pivot points. I used recycled clear plastic tubs that used to hold salad mix to hold the parts during a repair. Two wires connect to the DC motor. The motor's wire connections are not interchangeable. The model car will go backwards if the motor is wired incorrectly. I used a red permanent marker to mark one of the wires and the back of the motor. I then desoldered the wires from the motor and insulated the ends of the wires with tape. The plastic roadway graphics are held in place with 4 screws and needs to be removed in order to gain access to the magnetic control arm. At this point, I removed the batteries from this game. On the underside, steering is controlled by a belt and pulley system. The belt must cross over itself in order for steering to occur in the correct direction. Once the belt is removed, the pulley that connects to the magnetic control arm can be removed with 2 screws. A small nylon gear connects to the end of the shaft. This gear has a crack in it, causing it to rotate on the shaft and will have to be either replaced or repaired. The magnetic control arm was removed. It was held in place with a bracket and 2 screws. It was at this point I discovered that the wiper assembly that holds the magnetic control arm has either been glued or press-fit in place to the base, making it impossible to remove without breaking something. With the wiper assembly in place, it is impossible to remove the motor gearbox assembly for repair. At this point, I could only hope that lubricating the motor bearing and gear shafts, then applying PFTE grease to the gears, will get the motor to once again function. I also applied Labelle 107 plastic-friendly oil to the wiper assembly shaft as well. Success! After some cajoling and physical manipulation of the wiper assembly, the motor sprung to life. I decided at this time it was a good idea to lubricate the steering assembly here, and here. The steering wheel had a noticeable crack close to the hub. I used a tie strap to hold the cracked areas together, then applied superglue to the crack from the underside. The speedometer graphic was torn in 2 places. The adhesive on the back of the speedometer graphic was still sticky, and I was able to perform a partial repair. Reassembly. From the top, the magnetic control arm was installed in the wiper assembly. It is held in place with a bracket and 2 screws. From the bottom, the pulley that connects to the magnetic control arm was reinstalled with 2 screws. The steering belt was then reinstalled. The belt must cross over itself in order for steering to occur in the correct direction. Tape was then removed from the wire connections to the DC motor. The motor's wire connections were soldered in place with the wire marked red connected to the side of the motor with a red mark. The motor's wire connections are not interchangeable. The model car will go backwards if the motor is wired incorrectly. Back on the top side, the cracked nylon gear was reinstalled and secured in place with superglue as I could not find a suitable replacement. Some teeth were missing on the magnetic control arm. When it got to this point, the gear would just spin. The wiper assembly has an end stop that controls the travel of the magnetic control arm. I glued a plastic piece in place to further limit the travel of the magnetic control arm so that it never gets to the missing teeth. Once the batteries were reinstalled, I decided to test this game again before reinstalling the plastic roadway graphics and underside cardboard insert. Everything was in working order. The plastic roadway graphic was then reinstalled with 4 screws, and the underside cardboard insert with 4 screws as well. Final testing. The steering wheel must be turned left to its end stop so that the magnetic control arm will attract the car at the starting line and move it. The Sears Moto Drive car action game was more challenging than expected, and I was only able to reliably maneuver at low speeds. Box repair. The graphic box top from my Sears Moto Drive car action game had some issues with the corners. I used water-activated paper gum tape to reinforce the corners from the inside. The paper gum tape was first cut to the proper length and folded down the center in preparation for its installation. I was able to repair 3 corners. Unfortunately, one corner was too damaged to repair. The graphic box top was then placed over the cardboard bottom. I then cleaned the top with my go-to cleaner, Windex. I then applied a coat of Armorall to bring back the luster of the laminated box top graphics. Pictured here was the finished product. Not perfect, but better. Conclusion. Thank you for watching this how-to repair video on repairing the 1979 Sears Moto Drive car action game. I truly enjoyed my time working on this fun little toy repair project. Please like this post and subscribe to Rust Belt Vintage Toy Repair so that you're alerted to my future posts.